the quiet feedback loops that shape global outcomes. The world doesn't change all at once. It adjusts, reacts, and reinforces itself quietly. And by the time the shift is visible, it is already complete. This matters today because global outcomes are no longer driven by single decisions or dramatic events. They are shaped by feedback loops, small responses that trigger further responses, compounding until direction feels inevitable. These loops are rarely announced. They operate beneath headlines, inside systems that reward certain behaviors and discourage others. To understand how this works, we have to stop looking for causes and start observing responses. A cautious move prompts caution elsewhere. A small restriction tightens behavior downstream. Confidence withdrawn in one corner alters expectations across the system. Each reaction feeds the next, quietly steering outcomes without any central command. London sits at the center of many of these loops, not because it controls them, but because it concentrates observation. The city watches how institutions respond to stress, how markets adapt to signals, how behavior changes after minor adjustments. Over time, these responses become predictable, not individually, but collectively. At first, the effects seem insignificant. A risk limit adjusted, a policy interpreted conservatively, a transaction delayed. None of these appear decisive, but together, they create momentum. The system begins moving in a direction no one explicitly chose. This is the power of feedback. It does not persuade. It does not command. It accumulates. Once feedback loops take hold, outcomes feel natural. Participants believe they are reacting to reality, unaware that their reactions are creating it. The system reinforces itself quietly, rewarding alignment and penalizing deviation. And by the time anyone asks who decided this direction, the answer is already gone. Because no one did, the system decided itself. Feedback loops gain power because they feel rational at every step. Each participant reacts logically to immediate conditions. A bank tightens credit because risk appears elevated. A fund reduces exposure because liquidity seems thinner. A firm delays investment because uncertainty feels higher. None of these decisions are extreme. Each makes sense in isolation. But systems do not experience isolation. They experience accumulation. London has observed this pattern repeatedly. A modest adjustment in one institution subtly alters conditions for another. That second institution responds, reinforcing the original signal. Soon, what began as caution becomes confirmation. The loop strengthens not through intent, but through repetition. This is how direction emerges without leadership. Once a feedback loop stabilizes, it becomes difficult to interrupt. Participants stop questioning the original signal and begin responding to the collective behavior instead. The loop becomes self-validating. Action confirms expectation. Expectation justifies further action. Markets begin behaving as if a decision has been made, even though none was. This creates asymmetry. Those inside the loop feel justified. Those outside feel confused. Attempts to counter the direction appear risky, even irrational. Resistance weakens because deviation carries cost. Alignment becomes the safest option, regardless of whether the outcome is optimal. London understands that feedback loops are not inherently dangerous. They are how complex systems adapt. But unmanaged loops can overshoot. They can harden into rigidity. They can suppress alternative paths before they are explored. Breaking a loop requires more than contradiction. It requires interruption, a pause, a signal that behavior is being misread, a demonstration that conditions have changed. But interrupting feedback is difficult because it feels like swimming against current reality. Participants hesitate. No one wants to be first to challenge momentum. And so the loop continues, quietly shaping outcomes that no one explicitly chose. Yet everyone now follows. The conflict emerges when feedback loops stop adapting and start hardening. What began as a flexible response slowly turns into doctrine. Participants no longer react to conditions. They react to the loop itself. Decisions are made because that is what the system expects, not because the environment demands it. Adaptation gives way to inertia. London recognizes this moment as a warning sign. When feedback hardens, risk becomes mispriced. Opportunity disappears prematurely. Innovation stalls. The system continues reinforcing a direction that may no longer be justified. But reversing course feels dangerous because the loop has already shaped expectations. This is where fragility hides. The more entrenched the loop, the more brittle the system becomes. Small shocks no longer dissipate. They ricochet. Behavior converges too tightly. Diversity of response disappears. Everyone moves the same way at the same time for the same reasons. At this stage, even correct information struggles to break through. Evidence is reinterpreted to fit the existing direction. Signals that contradict the loop are dismissed as noise. Participants protect consistency over accuracy. London has seen how dangerous this can be. When loops harden, they create false certainty, and false certainty invites excess. Leverage builds quietly. Assumptions go unchallenged. The system appears stable until it encounters something it cannot absorb. This is a paradox of feedback. The mechanism that creates coordination can also destroy resilience. Breaking the loop requires someone to accept short-term discomfort, to act against expectation, to introduce friction where flow feels natural. This is rarely rewarded immediately. It often looks wrong until it isn't. And that hesitation is what allows loops to persist far longer than they should. Because once feedback becomes identity, changing direction feels like admitting failure. And systems resist that more than risk itself. The climax arrives when the loop finally breaks. Not with an explosion, not with a crisis headline, but with a subtle refusal to continue reinforcing itself. One institution pauses. Another adjusts differently than expected. A familiar response fails to appear. At first, nothing seems to change, but the absence of reinforcement weakens the loop. Momentum slows. Assumptions lose clarity. Participants begin questioning whether alignment still makes sense. The system hesitates, and in that hesitation, flexibility returns. London understands this moment well. Breaking a feedback loop does not require force. It requires asymmetry. A few actors behaving differently is enough to restore diversity of response. Once behavior diverges, the loop can no longer validate itself. Expectation fragments. Risk is reassessed. Opportunity reemerges. The system regains its ability to adapt. This is the resolution of quiet feedback. Outcomes stop feeling inevitable. Direction becomes negotiable again. Choice re-enters the system. The lesson is precise and unforgiving. Feedback loops are powerful, but temporary. They guide systems only while behavior remains uniform. Once diversity returns, control dissolves. London's enduring skill lies in recognizing when alignment has gone too far, and when to allow difference back in, not through command, not through disruption, but through restraint and timing. Because global outcomes are rarely decided by single actions, they are shaped by repetition. And sometimes, the most powerful move is simply refusing to repeat it. Subscribe to join the journey. The quiet